Hi there, I'm Jake Collins. I'm a short term rental host and hockey player, and my favorite Denver activity is pond hockey on Evergreen Lake.
Hey, that is not a bad gig, Jake. As far as like hockey itself, I never played hockey, and to be honest, I don't think I'm that great on blades. I find it to be kind of counterintuitive for, I guess, myself, but yeah, like why there specifically as opposed to any other lake in the mountains?
So that's a great question. It's really the lake I've spent the most time on. It's close to Denver. It's only a 30-minute drive. There's quite a few other lakes you can play pond hockey in the Denver area, but you may have to get all the way up into like Breckenridge and Keystone area, which is about an hour and a half, no traffic, and usually you're fighting the ski traffic to get up there. Whereas people aren't exactly skiing in Evergreen, so it's about as short of a drive as you can go, and still get good ice. That's well taken care of for most of the year and get into some pond hockey, which is always a great time.
I love it. And for those that are not familiar or don't know what they're listening to right now, this is the Invest in Denver podcast. And thanks for listening. I have Jake Collins here, and I'm really stoked to get the conversation going with him. I kind of want to go back to that hockey situation. I know you yourself are just you've been playing hockey, it sounds like, for all your life. And you coming from the Alabama scene, people don't usually tie hockey to Alabama.
Yeah,
So, what really got you into the hockey scene?
yeah, no, great question. I get that one a lot for that exact reason. I actually grew up a little bit all over. I lived in Ohio, New York, Alabama, then went to college in Alabama, then Texas, then into Colorado. So uh, when I was growing up in upstate New York, we were about 3 hours from the Canadian border. So hockey was the football equivalent for Texas. That was what it was in upstate New York. So it was what everybody played. It was cold most of the year, so you could play it a long time. So that's what got me started, and then I did end up playing club hockey in college for Alabama. I throw that club in there because I was not NCAA. I was good, but not that good. But enjoyed it. Got to play there for 4 years, and now I play, beer league where all hockey players' careers go to die slowly. I'll be doing that for the next hopefully 30, 40 years and getting out on frozen ponds whenever I can, just play as much as I can.
Yeah, and let's go back to the whole Evergreen scene as well. I know we're sort of like going back and forth, but the
Yeah,
main tie between the two is hockey, you know?
sure.
How did you even find this place? Did you maybe find a couple of people that were like, hey, I know a sick spot, you should go with us?
Yeah, that's a great point. I kind of found Evergreen by accident. I looked at a lot of the other more famous, pond hockey tournaments where people travel in from all over the country. Those were all booked up. So I ended up stumbling on Evergreens for a tournament and just went up there with some friends that flew into town. We went up and had the tournament there and immediately just, how close it was, how beautiful the lake is up there. We actually kayaked in that lake not long ago in the summer, so as beautiful then as it is when it's frozen. But we kind of found it by accident and just loved it ever since. I mean, I love the city town of Evergreen. Beautiful downtown area with like it's really cool, like small mountain town. But like I said, I just love that it's like so close to Denver. You feel like you're in the mountains. You're surrounded by nature. There's elk going through the city at all times, and just being that close, it's really been awesome. So
Yeah. And I know you're sort of like being on the humble side with saying club hockey versus the collegiate status, but I was seeing some pictures of you with the actual Roll Tide uniform. I mean, you
yeah,
looked pretty legit on the ice with the official A and everything on there. So, what
yeah.
was your experience like that over in the Alabama scene and I don't know, just college in general?
Yeah, so I love Alabama, Roll Tide always, and it was a just a fantastic place to go to school. But it's actually a really great place to play hockey as well. We were in the top division of club hockey that you can play in, and we were kind of fortunate. fortunate and unfortunate. Our home ice rink was about an hour from campus. So it was a real pain to drive to practice and games. But because it was an hour from practice, we were in the city of Birmingham. And there's no professional sports in Alabama. There's only college. So there are just diehard college sports fans everywhere. So we actually ended up getting like kind of a cult following in Birmingham just for being Alabama. And we would play Auburn every year for like a 3 game tournament, and we'd have like 8,000 fans per game at those games. So it felt like a real. I mean, it was a crazy atmosphere. It's actually you don't think hockey when you think Alabama, but it's a really great place to go for it.
Yeah, no joke. And the only hockey that I was really into, and at the time, so I'm from San Diego, and the hockey team over there is the Gulls. And you have some really diehard fans over there. And I did not realize so I remember going to a game, and I don't know if this is true for every hockey game going forward or what everyone else's experience. I've only gone to one in my whole life. So they don't, let's say you go to the bathroom and you want to go back to your seat while the game's going. They do not let you go back to your seat until there's some sort of pause, penalty. I don't know if there's timeouts,
Yes, yeah,
but
no,
or
you
like,
got it.
yeah. And I had no idea. I was like, what am I doing here? Why? I mean, everyone was just fixated and watching the puck the whole time and like not giving me the time of day until the goalie caught it or something happened, right?
Yeah,
So that is the thing. It sounds like, yeah.
yeah, that's funny. One of those things I wouldn't have thought about, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And yeah, I mean, it's because the actions like it can go on 2, 3, 5 minutes without a whistle, and it's so fast paced that somebody walks in front of you, you can miss a goal or something like that. Where football, it's like 3 hours long, but I think they only play like 15 minutes of actual action in that time. Which I love football,
Right.
don't get me wrong, but it's much easier to get up and down watching a different sport. So
For sure. Most of the time, people are chilling and drinking beers, anyways, waiting for the next play. So,
exactly.
uh, with that being said, I know you're a hardcore hockey guy, so you're stoked for the Avs. I'm sure you were stoked with them winning the cup.
Yeah, it was awesome. I moved to Denver a year ago, and I said I was going all in on the Avs because in all the states I've lived, I've never really lived in a hockey town before. So I'd kind of lost my like hometown who I would root for. So I just have to point out I went all in on the Avs before they won the Stanley Cup, not after they won the Stanley Cup. So but yeah, I love going to Avs games, and I mean, yeah, no better hockey to go to, and I mean, Denver in general. Denver University won the NCAA hockey championship last year, so I
That's
think that
right.
was the only time that's happened in like where the college and the professional won the Stanley Cup and the national championship in the same year. So pretty cool, pretty good time to be a hockey fan in Denver.
No joke. What a time to be alive in general. That's sweet, man. So it sounds like you were here not too long ago. So maybe if you could give us a quick synopsis of I know you mentioned that you grew up in several different places. Maybe like how long did you stay in each of these places and what eventually led you to Denver?
Yeah, great question. So, um, growing up, my dad actually ran amusement parks. Kind of a
No
weird job, but
way.
we traveled a lot. We traveled around a fair bit because of that. So, I was in New York till I was about 12. Then we moved and did a couple years in Alabama, where my older sister ended up going to Alabama. Then I was about in middle school. We moved to Ohio, and I went to high school there. That's where I call home. That's where all my family is from. So I lived there through high school, college in Alabama. Then I spent about 3 years in Houston, which really loved Houston. It was a great city, but after a few years in Houston, there's no. The biggest complaint is there's no like nature whatsoever. It's just 100 degrees in the summer, humid, hot, swampy, everything you could want in a major city from like sports and theater and everything like that. And the food there is unparalleled. It's probably the best food city I've ever lived in. But
Mm.
we were ready for something new. and my at the time fiance and a group of our friends actually made the trip up here to Denver just for a weekend trip, and my now wife and I just fell in love with it, and we were like, as soon as we can, you know, if we're looking for a new job, we should, Denver's going to be at the top of the list for where we were gonna look, and that opportunity came along and we took it, and we moved to Denver and have not regretted it for a minute. So it's been great.
And what year was that?
We moved in August of 2021,
Oh, for sure. So about a year from
just over
a
a
year
year.
ago.
Yeah.
Wow, look at you. All right,
Yeah.
dude. Uh, so I came by in August of 2020 during COVID, and it was a struggle making friends at the time.
I can
Um,
imagine.
and at the time too, I was kind of into real estate and investing and all that good stuff, which I'd love to talk about with you later on in the episode.
Yep.
But at the time when I moved to Colorado or moved to Denver, I know the beer scene was almost unparalleled. I mean, San Diegans will, fight me for this. But I will say that, like me growing up in San Diego, that a lot of the beers, like there's some top notch, consistently great beers that are like award winning. But then you get these like some microbreweries that like to take their chance in beer and they are, for lack of a better term, they're just not as good. But I know like with Denver, like there's something about the water, there's something about the elevation, or something about that where the culture just ingrains itself in the beer and consistently, like no matter what brewery I've been to, it seems like it's just been a solid B plus or higher. Like I've never seen any that have been like, C or C minus or lower or something like that. Is that something you can attest to? Because I know you love your beer around these parts as well.
Yeah, I do. And you're absolutely right. I don't know how many years I would have to live here to be able to hit every brewery in town, but it's a very long time. I've never seen so many breweries in such a concentrated area. But yeah, everyone I've been to, I mean, they all have something going for them, whether it's, amazing beer or in like a kind of hole in the wall type, strip mall type venue,
Yeah.
or just an amazing, spot overlooking the mountains with, less good beer, but just you don't care because it's amazing views of the mountains. So yeah, I would agree. Just tons of really, really good beer, and no shortage of options.
The moment that you said, even if the beer is not that great, the view is stellar, right? I mean, although their beer is great and the view is stellar, I am a huge advocate for new terrain over in Golden.
I love
Are
new
you? Sounds
terrain.
like you're nodding your head. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely have their hats somewhere around here. They have great hats too.
It's a great spot, and they got a bunch of food trucks, dog friendly. They got outdoor patios, and I think sprinklers were on. Where you like overhead, they have those misters.
Yep.
I mean, they accommodate for everything over there, and the kids love it as well. Yeah, definitely go check out New Terrain, guys. Is there any other breweries that you would recommend, newcomers, or just something that you're a fan favorite of?
Oh, so I'm sure, as we'll talk about a little later, I live in Arvada, which is a suburb on Northwest, and there's this awesome area called Old Town Arvada, tons of restaurants, and it itself has two breweries, which I believe are both offshoots, like a second location of other breweries. But I love Denver Beer Co. And I love their what is it? Denver Gold is probably my favorite beer in Denver so far. So that would be my recommendation for sure. After New Terrain, New
Okay.
Terrain's amazing.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, I've never tried that place before yet, but I have been in Arvada's Old Town. There's this pizza place on one of those popular corners. I forgot what
Hmm.
it was exactly, but it was like prosciutto, arugula, and some sort of like olive oil dressing with it too. It was amazing. I couldn't even
Yeah,
that combination I've never even tried before, but it was stellar pizza.
yeah, very interesting. I think that's Homegrown Tap and Dough is their name, and they have some really cool, really good pizza.
Nice. I dig it. I mean, with the beer and the food, I mean, the last thing that we need to talk about with the whole Denver scene is the activities and the outdoors. I know with you being a hockey guy, especially playing pond hockey during the winter and going kayaking and things like that, there's so much to do in the outdoor scene, activities, and people see Denver just being as a mountain town. If I were new to the town, I need to know what is out there. I mean, I don't want anything too strenuous just because, I'm not used to the altitude or something like that. This isn't me personally. I like to go hardcore. But if I was new to the scene, let's say coming from Houston where you're close to sea level, now you're a mile high, right? If I was looking for something a little bit less strenuous, but something with spectacular views, is there something that comes to mind when I mention that?
Yes, absolutely. I'll give you two just because, but there's one, the one hike that we did that literally convinced us to move here was when we went into Boulder. It's called the First and Second Flatirons Trail. It's right above Boulder. It's not actually, it's the Front Range. So it's the first mountain you can see from, the very flat part of Denver. We did that trail. It's like 2.5, 3 hours. It's basically the same elevation as, Denver is. So not, we were still huffing and puffing from flying in and doing it the next day, but would definitely recommend that one. And then if you want more of like a completely surrounded by mountains feel, we recently did one. I think it's pronounced Berthud Falls. It's right up I-70, Berthoud, right up I-70. It's about an hour. It's a 6 mile round trip, but you can basically go up a mile and you're at the peak, and then you kind of walk along this ridge line, and it's some of the most beautiful views I've seen yet. Though we've truly never had a bad hike in Denver. They're all, I mean, you can't go wrong.
I can truly attest to that, to be honest. Especially with the flat irons and you being so close to
Mhm.
Boulder. As soon as you get done with that, go straight into town and enjoy the food scene over there. Pearl Street's excellent, especially if there's a farmers markets going on. There's really not anything bad to say about that scene, maybe just parking. That's the only thing that I can think of. But during the wintertime over in the Flatiron area, sledding is huge over there too. And that was the first time I did like legit sledding. Usually it's just like snowboarding or like going to the resorts or whatever. I had so much fun just not bringing that much gear, but just going down and having a good time. Have you done something like that over there?
No, I think my eyes went a little wide when I heard about it. That sounds awesome. We've only sledded like all the way up in, yeah, like in Breckenridge or something like that. But now that you mention it, that area, I can picture exactly what you're talking about, and it'll be amazing for sledding. So,
Yeah, pretty close to the base, and there's not that many trees. It's not like anyone's like breaking their arms or something like that. And everyone, like the first people after the powder, they make that trail for you. So it's a really nice scene. And of course, you right when you're done, you're pretty much in the parking lot too. Like, all right, I'm done. I get to go go eat after this. So it's kind of nice. Well, outside of that, I would love to just talk about the real estate journey that you've had so far. It's been I know we've met a couple times through like Blake Street, with the fight team meetups and things like that. I guess before we get into your properties and why you started real estate investing, I want to hear what was that mindset change? I mean, it's not every day that you run into someone that's like, you know what? I will invest in real estate. There's some sort of catalyst that gets you to that point. Was there anything that you can attribute that mindset to, and what was that like?
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, thinking back, I mean, even back when I lived in Texas, it's probably been a good 3, 4 years now that I've had like the full on real estate bug. I think what happened was, I in college, I actually got an engineering co-op, which essentially means that you go to class for 2 semesters, and then for one semester you do a little bit. It's a bit more involved internship where you get paid like an actual kind of employee, and you work 40 hours a week for a semester. So it extends out your graduation date by about a year, but you get that real world work experience. And I was doing that in college, and I did that for a full year. And I think between doing that for a full year and then going back to school and living on campus, I spent maybe all but $1,000 of it in 1 year. So I was just ripping through. I mean, in hindsight, it's college. Do I regret it? No, I had some great times, but it was not a sustainable lifestyle for sure. So I think just was looking into it was originally the thought was like, how do I make more money? And then, is there a way to get ahead of this equation of just kind of spending everything I make and, having a great time, but not really getting anywhere? And I somehow stumbled on a number of podcasts. But I think I actually first found Set for Life, the book by Scott Trench from Bigger Pockets. And in there, he like casually mentions Bigger Pockets. And I got just obsessed with the podcast there. Basically, that was, yeah, 4 years ago. So that was really the trigger that got me into it. And ever since, I've just been, figuring out. I saw the potential power of real estate. I was always somebody throwing in, my 401k, maybe throwing in a little bit more into stocks. But I saw really just the power of, real estate investing to allow you to get there a lot earlier.
Mhm.
Access money that access investing money prior to 59 and a half, which just seemed forever away.
Yeah.
Um, and that was really just kind of a turning point, I'd say, and I've been all in on real estate ever since as my future vehicle.
Gotcha. What time period was this? And I know your current wife, Paget, she's into the game as well. But was there any convincing that had to be done? Was she into the game as well? I know a lot of people like this day and age, like they would love to invest in real estate, but the harder part of that equation is getting your partner on board and having two people versus one person investing both sides of the income and the investitures and all that good stuff. It's much more beneficial to have two versus one and working against each other. So, was that at all a
Yeah.
hard task for you, or was she fully on board as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. She was not fully on board to begin with. I think looking back, is very fortunate. She was actually a much better saver than I was, and was very conscious of keeping a budget, and which was great when we were first dating. But I think it took quite a long time. Thankfully, I think we were in the stage where we were really saving. We saved for a good 2 years before we could really do anything. And during that time, I was just, basically putting on audiobooks on my way to work every single day and just tearing through books and podcasts. And I mean, I talked her ear off about it for about 2 years, and I think she's definitely tired of it at first. And maybe she definitely probably still gets tired of me talking about real estate to this day. But I'm thankful every day that when we first got our first home, she wasn't 100% on board, but she trusted me enough to take the leap, even though she was very scared. I was nervous, um, but she leapt anyway. And I think now that we've gotten into it and we've seen some of the returns and the power, she's definitely uh, a lot more on board. I'd say she's fully on board and actually starting to take more of an interest in learning about the power of real estate going forward.
She has drank the Kool-Aid. I love it.
Yes, slowly but surely.
No, I love to hear it, man. And everyone's situation is a little bit different. It's a struggle at first, and luckily, Kat and I, like my wife and I, we sort of saw eye to eye, and we went in it together, especially like learning about it together and understanding like what is the main point of investing, and like first of all, but then why real estate after that, right? I mean, for me, it was financial independence and getting that financial freedom, getting that passive income to pay for our bills, to actually live the life we want. It's not about like the accumulation of money. It's not about the, what my number says on a screen, like how much money I have in my account. It's all about like the life I want to live, If my utilities, mortgages, car payments equal $8,000. My passive income takes that $8,000 and it covers it. Then I can live whatever I want to live or wherever I want to live, however I want to live it. And my why is just that for that time freedom. Is that something that you resonate with, or is there any sort of like why for you that, spoke to you and Paget?
Yeah, I think that totally resonates with me a lot. I think it came from a place of first, having been in situations where, you know, a parent loses a job and then within 2 weeks, money is just tight and it's a stressful time. Being there myself, leaving a co-op in college and quickly being like, well, where'd all that money go? Just not wanting to feel that stress, but also, working towards what could be, you know, having that. I like the idea of like optionality. I enjoy my job now, but if I ever one day don't, and I want to quit and pursue something radically different and, go uh, learn how to be a teacher or something along that, and um, which I don't think we pay teachers enough. But if being able to take something lower salary like that for the reasons of just like really wanting to do it, definitely wanted to have that. And I think I'm also just to an extent like I work hard to be lazy. I would just love to not have to work, and like I will work so hard to not have to work. It's it's crazy. But yeah.
I 100% agree with you on two fronts. Number one, working hard to be lazy. I feel like one of my whys is so I can play video games for at least 4 hours a day. I feel like it's been ingrained in me ever since I was a teenager and I can't let go of it. I feel like it's in my DNA right now. So I wouldn't be able to do that if I
Same.
didn't have my investments, if I didn't have my assets. So work our butt offs now so that we can live the life we want later. So the second point I want to touch on as well is the education portion of it. I totally agree with you that teachers are not paid enough for being the leaders of the future generation. We need people to see that salary and not have that be a driving factor, but like the better people that are like great educators that put the time and the effort into this stuff need to be compensated appropriately. But the people that are going into it, sure, they have the love and the drive for it. But the thing is that they don't have the resources or time, like stuff at home is going on and their mind is, it's split two ways. So if you were to have those investments pay for your worries like daycare or some like paying off your car or something like that. That's a lot less worry, and you can dedicate a lot more time to having a more fulfilling experience for those kids in the classroom. So a lot of people see that, okay, time freedom, but what does that mean? That's what I mean. It means like making sure that your worries are left at home or elsewhere and you can fully dedicate your time and your energy into the next generation. So, yeah, I like that, man. Good answer. I don't know if you wanted to expand on that a little
Well
bit more.
said. No, I think that was a bit of a mic drop moment for you there. That was really good.
Well, thanks for hanging out in the Invest in Denver podcast. I'm ending it right now. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Yeah, I mean, totally agree with that. So I know you've touched on what your portfolio is like right now. So before we even get to that, I'd love to hear your journey of like how you even started that whole process of like what's it like to work with a realtor, maybe a proper lender, what were you pre-approved for, and how did you even find this property?
Yeah, great question. So, I started out, Paget and I, when we moved to Denver, we were moving in August. I was starting my job the next month, and it was kind of a quick turnaround. I think, I maybe had 5 weeks between when I left my old job and when my new job started. And so we took a trip out here and, we looked in different areas. We spent all day in the car. I think we arrived Saturday morning at like 5 a.m. and we drove all day just checking out different neighborhoods. And it was just exhausting and overwhelming. And then, like, the thought of buying our first house at that time, too, with that limited information was just overwhelming. So we decided to rent when we first moved here, which in hindsight, I wish we would have bought earlier because the market went, crazy shortly after. But we learned the areas that we really loved, and I'm hopeful that like a podcast like this can hopefully put somebody in a space where they know some of the great areas to look at, as opposed to just flying in and driving everywhere ahead of time, so that they can make that decision. But we decided to rent, and we found a great place near Old Town Arvada that we loved, and we would walk there, and um, we started to look, and I mentioned the Set for Life previously. I had convincing your spouse. I had convinced Paget that we would at least look for an area that we could house hack to some degree. So, separate off part of the unit and live in the other to hopefully cover some or most of the payment. And so we had started looking. The reason I got more serious about buying was we found this just absolute slam dunk house hack deal that was going to be, amazing. That I was like, the numbers are too good on this. We could be getting paid a lot. It had an opportunity to have 3 units that we could long term rent one, Airbnb the other, and live in the other. And it had like a good layout for it. So I just kind of scrambled and started. I was not ready. I'd been wanting to go to meetups. I had not gone to any meetups yet. So I just started reaching out on bigger pockets, and I quickly remembered an episode of the podcast where they interviewed Craig Curlop about his experience, and I remember that he was a realtor in Denver. So I reached out to him, and he responded that a member of the FI team would reach out to me. His name's Chad Rock, and Chad's awesome. He reached out to me. We went and toured this property. I started getting, some lenders that he suggested, that I started having discussions with, and we actually put in an offer on that house, way higher than we ever wanted, like ever thought we would put an offer, but just the numbers look so good. And we didn't get it. We actually technically had the highest offer, but we didn't get it because the seller had just bumped into another buyer and like talked to them about it. And he liked them better than us, I guess. So he ended up going with them. Um, but we didn't get that property, but it clearly set us on the, oh, okay, now I have a realtor, now I have a lender. That timing for us was terrible. I think we had just moved into our apartment like 2 months previous, and we had like an 8 month lease. We were like, the timing was terrible. We weren't prepared, but the deal looked so good that we wanted to take a shot. But we recouped, and we resettled, and then started looking again in February or
Yeah,
January
and sorry to interrupt a
after
little
that
bit,
point.
Jake, but before you go
Yeah, not at
into
all.
the that what you actually ended up with, but there's a lot of good stuff here where you're exploring, you're understanding the world of like buying a piece of property. Is this, or at this time, would this be your first home together with you and Paget? Okay.
Yes, it would be our first
Yeah,
home. We had almost bought one in Houston, but we didn't end up going through it.
gotcha. And then the whole concept of house hacking. So I know you mentioned that it's the concept of mitigating your mortgage as much as possible, trying to make your house an asset versus a liability, like completely, right? As far as like the mortgage payment, that's a liability, but how you can generate income on off of it is an asset. So when you look at that
Right.
portion of it, what made the numbers look so good? Like what were you projecting at the time? And it seems like you were about to go above and beyond what the asking price was in order to land this deal. So the numbers must have looked insane.
Yeah, so they looked great, and I guess I would clarify. So it was like a house that had 3 separate units. It had an upstairs that was a 3-2, and then the downstairs they had converted into a 2 separate units. So looking at it in hindsight, it probably wouldn't have worked for us, due to the fact that it wasn't a accessory dwelling unit. Um, it may have been, for lack of a better word, illegal, to go off the to go off. renting those out as ADUs when they weren't permitted, but we would have either had to go through that process to get it permitted, which I think we would have figured out, or we could have done um, one unit as a long-term rental and one unit as a short-term
Mhm.
rental, because it would be a partial house short-term rental, not a separate unit.
Yep.
So basically, we would have been doing like a private room. Um, but with those two under units, I think the back when interest rates were friendly, the total payment on this house, it was like I think we offered 625, which was like right at the tip top of what we could qualify for. Um, we offered that. The payment would have been somewhere around 3,200, and there was a two bed, one bath unit in the basement and a one bed, one bath. So, we were looking in the neighborhood of, okay, we could probably get 16 to 1800 for the two bed, and another 1300 for the one bed or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it worked out to that long-term rent would basically cover the entire property. We'd be living for fully free. That would cover mortgage, insurance, taxes, our entire payment essentially. So we had been only really finding places where we could, get maybe half to three quarters of our rent paid for. And part of that is because we had very specific criteria. We wanted to live in Arvada. There are other areas where you could get, a lot closer on that spread to maybe even cover your whole mortgage. But we kind of found this place. It was in a great area. It was a weird house. They had, a detached four-car garage that was like a workshop. They had chicken coops everywhere, even though it was in like a residential neighborhood. It was really it was a strange spot, but we liked it, so we went for it.
Love it.
But the
Yep.
numbers look great, and yeah, we took lessons learned from
Yeah,
it
for
for
sure.
sure.
So, I mean, you put in an offer, you were working with Chad, you got pre-approved. I feel like the stage is set for you to find that next property. I mean, it was only just a matter of time till you found something that was, perfect for you guys. Maybe not that unicorn where you had the four-car garage, three units at the same time, but something that still paid the bills, right? And it's funny you mentioned that, like, yeah, we were going at 625 and our monthly payment would be 3,200. Nowadays, like seeing what interest rates are at, like 6%, almost 6.5% for some people, it's kind of insane because that 3,200 mortgage payment, you're looking at maybe low 500s. It's pretty insane nowadays. So, anywho, I'm sorry, I kind of want to just delve onto that, but you can continue on with like how you found that next property, your first house hack, and we'll go from there, and I'll ask some more questions once you get to it.
Yeah, sounds great. So once the winter passed, we started looking again, and man, it was slim pickings for sure. In the area, it was everything was flying off the market. People were going 70, 80,000 over asking, which I had never, just growing up in the Midwest and Northeast, I'd never grown up with anybody offering asking, let alone 80,000 over it. So that was crazy, but it got to the point where I was essentially looking at every offer, everything on Zillow. I could look at for our area within Arvada and Westminster and Sherwood that we would want to look at. I could look at literally every listing, and it wasn't that big of a lift. And we ended up actually finding this place because the listing for our house, which is a five bed, two bath, was actually showing on all of the Zillow, Redfin, showing as a zero bed, zero bath. So I think a lot of people were missing it because their filters would say, three plus beds, whatever. And this was listed as zero. So I called Chad, we toured it, and we ended up making an offer at asking in February of 2022, which was pretty crazy in hindsight. We got it, and we then we spent a month or so fixing it up, and then started our journey as short term rental hosts in April.
Way to go. I mean, so I know with me, even personally, I set up some filters in order to find the perfect property so that I don't waste my time like having to scavenge and try like looking at the virtual tours and things like that. So maybe you mentioned it already, maybe I didn't pick it up, but how did you find this one that was just misrepresented on Zillow?
Yeah, just basically by the market was so hot, I just turned off all my filters and I looked at every house available. There were not that many available. So I happened to find it. In hindsight, and maybe a lesson learned going forward, I'll probably um, check all zero bed filters going forward to see if there's any that that look like they don't belong there. But kind of a weird situation
And you know
that
what's
happened
funny
there.
is that you're not the first person to tell me that the property itself was, misrepresented on the MLS or Zillow. Maybe it's that diamond in the rough situation, and you guys lucked out hardcore with having the February 2022 madness that is the hot sellers market, especially with the really low interest rates and going in at asking price. That is almost unheard of during that time because I was going 30K, 50K, 70K above, and sure you were looking at the same thing, just being outbid, all the offers not going through. So I I commend you with your extra diligence in trying to find that property that's perfect for you guys. So kudos, man. It's really good. So now that I know that you have your house, like, are you currently living in there right now?
Yes, I'm currently there. We live in the upstairs, which is a 3 bed, 1 bath, and we are Airbnbing the basement, which is a 2 bed, 1 bath.
Lovely. So this is where we get into your star drop properties. And I love the website. I love that there's that aspect of like, hey, you can privately book this place outside of Airbnb. But maybe there's some additional, I guess, reasons why you have your own personal website for this specific property. So for those people that are familiar with like VRBO, Airbnb, booking.com, and things like that, why the heck would you have your own private website for a short-term rental like this one?
Yeah, great question. So I've got kind of a few reasons, but I would say the main one is I've recently been converted to believing in the power of needing to grow your own direct bookings. I think Airbnb and VRBO are great platforms for doing that. And when I travel, it's the first thing I look at. But being able to, I think one of the main things that I'm looking forward to is offering return guests, hey, if you ever want to come back, book it through me directly. And you can, Airbnb charges guests a lot more fees than they charge hosts, but they charge both. So, there's a lot of money on the table there. I could even potentially charge a little bit more to a direct booking. Um, and they would still be saving an exorbitant amount, upwards 10, 15% in fees that those online travel agencies offer. So that's kind of one of the reasons I built up the direct booking. The other is I am currently trying to grow short I'm going all in on short-term rentals and trying to grow that. So I'm using the website too as a kind of a landing page for my business of doing Airbnb consulting, for maybe doing some rental arbitrage or co-hosting for basically property managing a short-term rental for another investor. Um, my website is kind of a catch-all right now, but will eventually be separate the direct booking of the properties with the co-hosting and management side of things.
When people search for short-term rentals, it's so easy for people to get out there and search Airbnb or VRBO. How do people find star drop properties?
Great question, and it's one that I'm hoping to learn a lot more about. I have not really dived too much into the marketing piece of getting people to really find my property. I'll be completely honest, in the current standing where it's a 2 bed, 1 bath basement unit, I don't know that many people are gonna are gonna be searching for that outside of Airbnb. Our longer term goal is to eventually move out of this place, rent the whole house, and kind of rinse and repeat. And when we do have a full house in Arvada, I think it'll be a lot easier to start driving, maybe doing some creative marketing around the property. Um, that I hope to learn a lot more about. But yes, getting the word out there is super important, and it's something that I don't know a lot about right now, but am hoping to really drive the marketing of the direct bookings piece in the future.
Speaking of getting the word out there, I feel like meetups are the next best thing for you to tell people about your properties, tell people about your situation, and get other people that are trying to get into the real estate space or house hacking or whatever. Meetups are the place to go for you to, I don't know, just understand and pick other people's brains, their expertise, and things like that. I know you're a huge proponent for that, for meetups as well. So why? But why meetups? I mean, you're just like getting some beers with some other people, but like, sure, you're having conversations with them, but what do you really get out of that? It seems to be, a good place for people to congregate and hang out, but is there more to it than just having those simple conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say too, for me, after I moved here, you know, Chad, we had that experience with that first house. Chad invited me to tons of meetups, and I never went. I just couldn't bring myself to get up and go. I just felt like I wasn't ready. I couldn't provide a lot of value, so I never went. And then I finally, once I had bought the house, I felt like I was, you know, in a place where I could finally go. I could add value, and I totally regret that because I definitely should have started going sooner. And honestly, for the reasons exactly you said, like in hindsight, I love beer. I love talking about real estate. Why would I not go to a place where they give you a free beer and you talk about real estate? I mean, or most of the time, or you're buying a beer and you're just talking to people. Um, I it's huge, and I think it's making connections. And I think the word connection gets like a bad rap because like anyone can connect with you on LinkedIn. It seems like LinkedIn has kind of made it less personal, but it's really just making a friendship, for a better lack of a better word. Just talk to somebody, see if you guys click. If you don't, I don't know if you'll work together anyway because it's going to be a grind to to go through all your conversations. But it's really just finding people that you can chat with. You're chatting about a common interest. I've definitely already made some good friends, through the meetups that we've been going to. Um, and yeah, I mean, I love having a beer and talking real estate. So, and I do want to mention one thing too, just because my biggest fear, I think, before going was like, well, how do I even start a conversation with somebody?
Mm,
I'm a little bit of a extroverted introverted extrovert. I love talking to people, but I am like terrified for that first initiation.
mm.
And I finally realized that just like the first thing you say to someone's always going to be garbage. Like you have no reason to talk to a stranger ever. So just go in and say, "Hi, I'm Jake." And especially at meetups, people are so accommodating. Like they know they're in the same boat. They they'll welcome you right into the conversation. You just go from there. But getting over that initial fear, I think, is an important thing for starting in meetups for sure.
100%. And I feel like the question I asked you was more of a softball question because I know you love those meetups nowadays, and I do as well. But the thing is that I agree with you with that first initial interaction, right? That first initial interaction is a little bit of a nerve point for a lot of people. But I like to remind myself, and maybe other people too, maybe like you, Jake, where it's not what you say that people remember, it's how you make them feel. And going to these meetups, knowing that you've provided value for someone else or solved a problem for them or connected them to someone else who might help them out, that feels really good to them. And they will forever remember you like, hey, Jake, you introduced me to Chad. Thank you so much for that connection. I'm about to buy my first house hack. And now they relay you as that sort of gatekeeper. Well, I guess open gatekeeper. You're not keeping anything away from anyone. You're introducing more people, but it's really nice to know that it's the sentiment behind it and your intentions behind it, and all in all, you're just there to have a good time and bring other people up. So I know I could tell just from your personality that like you want to give so much to the community, and that's probably why you didn't go to your meetups earlier on. You're like, I have nothing to give. But the thing is, you were so already so far ahead than people that weren't even pre-approved yet, that weren't even house hacking yet, or weren't even consuming the same education that you were thinking about too. So I like to also think about that for myself as like, I might not be the best, but I'm 3 steps ahead of someone else. And I could bring them along there with me. So there's a lot more to it than providing the exact answers for every single person there. Just go out there and have fun and see, even if you don't connect on a real estate level, connect on a personal level. You know, like, hey, I like hockey too. Sick. All right.
Definitely. I think that's a sometimes that can be a little hack itself is just if you're at a real estate meetup and it's later in the night, talk to somebody about something other than real estate and find a common interest because some people are, talked out by that point. So that's how I've had luck with just, pivoting with, "Oh, you live near us. Do you know any of the good restaurants?" "Oh, no, we just moved here." "Oh, here, let me give you the rundown, in the ranking here." So, yeah, definitely agree with that.
I absolutely love it. Jake, thank you so much for just hanging out, man. You've already provided so much value for people out here. I guess one last thing before I turn the tables and give you the mic. What are the numbers looking like for the short term rental, and what's that look like compared to your mortgage?
Yeah, great question. So, our total payment, mortgage taxes, insurance, all that is about almost 3,000 even. And we have been, renting out April, May, June, July, August, we've been averaging about 2,300 a month. And we've had 2 months. We had 1 month where we were over, we made 3,200, and we had 1 month where we were like right at 29 and basically broke even. So I know comparatively, like a long-term rental, we'd be looking at, maybe somewhere 17 to 2,000 for that space. So, we're doing a little bit extra work. I think there's a lot of automation you do in Airbnb, which, you could cover in a whole separate podcast, but we're very happy with it and it's I mean, to be able to pay we were renting for 1,600 a small 2 bed 1 bath place, and now we own a home, our dog has a yard, and we pay somewhere around 500, 600 a month on average. So
I love those numbers, man. And you're owning the place, building the equity, getting the appreciation factor, learning how to run a business. There's so much benefit to it. And I will, before I go on that soapbox again, I'll sort of end it at that because that's a really good place to end on. So I will give the mic to you, Jake. Is there anything that you want to ask of me?
there is many questions I want to ask you. I'll try to distill it as much as I can. I'm curious what brought you to Denver.
For sure. Couple things. My wife and I, we grew up in San Diego for 30 years of our lives. And 2019, after we bought our first property over there, house hacked it, we rented it out. We were like, all right, there's so much of the world and so much of America that we have yet to see. I mean, I feel like we've only seen 1% of the world, if even. And we're like, where do we have family? And my brother and my parents were already living here in Denver. My brother was in Stapleton at the time, and my parents were in Parker. And so we're like, you know what? Yeah, let's go over there and see if we can house hack over there. And we initially we plus like bigger pockets is here too. I feel like that was another big point as well. And then we realized that hey, we were just struggling with the whole house hacking thing. We needed to work with a realtor, find a proper property. And I asked my parents, like, hey, do you mind if we just take a bedroom out and live with you for a couple months? And you're like, sure, you can stay in the basement. I was like, basement? Oh my God, you guys have basements. So that was a mind blowing thing. And that was, we just wanted to have that mountain experience, live in Denver. We never experienced winters below 40 degrees. So it was a whole new experience for us. And to be honest, I don't think I'm moving anytime soon. So Denver's the new home for us.
Awesome. Yeah, it's I've yet to meet somebody who's frustrated with Denver who's been here for I've yet to meet somebody who's been in Denver for more than 5 years. So it seems like everybody's moving here and everybody's loving it. So that's awesome. I'm curious, you as a real estate agent, working with investors. Have you noticed, are there any big drivers other than the, just Denver's awesome, that are really driving a lot of people here, or anybody that you've met or anything like that?
Yeah, good question. I'm glad you're asking that because it really is an economic factor for the appreciation of the city, and just that's the main three things that I look for in a property, whether I should invest in it or not. Economic growth, which means like our jobs moving here, our businesses moving here. Number two is population growth, are people moving here in general, right? And then also, crap, I forgot the third, but I mean, I'm sure it has to tie in with those other two, right? So, I mean, if jobs are moving here and people are moving here, why not invest in it? Because more growth, there's more cyclical velocity of money, is what David Green is saying. So, that's what I see in Denver. So, to answer your question fully, a lot of the hospital and medical fields are moving here as well. So, Anschutz is huge. UC Health, that's huge as well. So I'm seeing a lot of nurses stay here. And that's why like medium term rentals are becoming such a hot thing here in the Denver area because traveling nurses need a place to stay. And they're getting a stipend for living. And in order for you to accommodate for that, you need to have some sort of like just understand that you need to furnish the place. You need to understand how to automate the process so that you're not dealing with, that mess or whatever it is. So yeah, as far as investors go, or the reason why people are like looking to invest in here, medical and also tech. There's a lot of tech that's coming here, especially in the Boulder area, and I'm also seeing a lot of connection between the three major cities here over in the Front Range. You have Colorado Springs, Denver, and then Fort Collins to the north. So there's becoming less of a gap between those cities. And instead of them being completely separate, there's now this sort of amorphous blob of population density. So I'm not seeing it stopping anytime soon. And I see my money staying here.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
You just got to keep investing in Denver. Give one shout out for the podcast.
You said the name of the show.
Drink. Cool. Anything else, Jake? No rush or anything, but if there's any burning questions for you.
After doing the intro of my favorite thing in Denver, is there a favorite restaurant or a favorite brewery? You mentioned New Terrain, but any favorites there that maybe I haven't hit yet?
Yeah, totally. A couple of other people have asked me this, so I'll try to give some new answers. So a couple of things. So my parents live in Parker, and I heard about the Cherry Creek Trail. I was like, oh, cool. There's like a paved trail that runs along the Cherry Creek. And little did I know that the whole trail is like 30 miles and it spans from like Castle Rock all the way up to like downtown Denver. I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. So people can run marathons and end up in the downtown Denver area. So I was baffled by that. And for people that are not familiar with the scene of like trails, I feel like the first thing that Coloradans develop are the trails and the open space portions of the neighborhood. So they take so much pride in the open space and the recreational activities here. So Cherry Creek Trail, I'm a big fan of just because of that sentimental value as well. And as far as restaurants go, I'll mention something that I haven't mentioned yet. Two things. I love my desserts, so I have to give a shout out to two ice cream places. One doesn't have a brick and mortar, but it's Pints Peak, a play off Pikes Peak, but definitely pick up a pint from there. And also Right Cream, who has a brick and mortar pretty recently, over off Larimer and 31st, I believe it is. So right in the heart of the Rhino area. So, and then as far as the restaurant goes, check out Mr. Oso. Great Mexican fusion, and great drinks as well. Go check out their cocktails.
Awesome, great suggestions, and I haven't been to any of them, so I'm excited.
It's all for you, man. Sweet. Anything else for you?
Think that's it. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Nice. Jake, dude, it's been a genuine pleasure. Thanks for hanging out with me and for being a great host as well, for holding the mic and everything like that. So, if people were to reach out to you and maybe even try to find your property on Star Drop Properties, how can they reach out to you?
Great question. The best way is probably on Instagram. You can find me at jake.real.estate. And then you can also check out my website at stardropproperties.com. That's star and then drop and then properties. So hopefully easy enough to spell. Uh, yeah, those are probably the best two places.
Love to hear it. I am at Ian.realestateagent. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I post up some weekly videos on YouTube, whether that's vlogging, house hacking, things like that. Or I go into vacant properties and see what the deal analysis is like, how you can make this a house hacking property. Or if it's not a house hacking property, I tell you that I don't think it is very viable. So it's very educational stuff. Come for the memes, but stay for the education. And if there's anything else that people want to reach out to me, my number is 720-704-3552. I don't care if people text me, call me, or whatever. Just reach out to me if you got any burning questions. With that being said, leave us a 5-star like, subscribe, review, whatever, comments. We want to hear from you. And what do you want to hear from the Invested Denver podcast? So, with that being said, thank you so much for being on, Jake. Thank you for being here, man.